But when it comes to the sun on a flat motionless plane, first thing to understand the idea of the atmospheric dome. So let's see, so far we agree, we are existing, we live here somewhere. I'm assuming we're on the same page. We can see in a circle around us for about 3 miles in radius. If it's very clear, perhaps more. Looking at something very large, a building or maybe a large boat, we can see further. But generally speaking, a 6-foot man can see about 3 miles from his position. If we get up higher, we can see further. Our view circle enlarges. All right, let's look at this observer here and realize that the air in front of us can be a lot like a pane of glass, that if you added a second pane of glass or a third pane, a fourth pane, eventually it would become harder to see because you have more of this glass that's just going to add up, just like our atmosphere adds up in front of our eyes. So one could say that seeing further through the air might be more difficult. If we add panes of glass, things get progressively more difficult to see. Notice the red dot here on the back of the 15 panes of glass is more difficult to see than the same red dot at the front. If our observer stands and takes a look at his surroundings, we know we can see in a 360-degree circle around us, and our view is the radius of that circle. Now, where would the most atmosphere or panes of glass be to our observer? Well, it's at the ground level, the thickest portion of our atmosphere. As we go up, our atmosphere thins out. So here we have the most atmosphere at the Earth level. So knowing where the most is and where the least is, we can come to the conclusion or the realization that we see in a dome-like viewpoint. Since the second most heavy portion of the atmosphere is when we start to look up just a little bit, well, progressively from there we see less and less atmosphere and distortion. This is a dome shape. We see through the atmosphere in a dome-like shape from the observer's point of view. And every single person on Earth each has their own dome view of the sky above. Let's look at an example. So let's say these two people have a cloud over their heads. Let's say that that cloud is 10,000 feet. It's above each of their heads. Each observer would see the other cloud almost at the horizon. As it went off into the distance, that cloud, even though it's 10,000 feet above his buddy, would be down at the horizon line. They would see something like this. And of course, the guy looking back would see almost the exact same thing, something like this. And so even though both observers have the cloud 10,000 feet above their heads, they can see the cloud above the other guy at the horizon. It is at times indistinguishable from the horizon. They would both see the cloud sloping down in the distance. So if that cloud traveled towards the other guy, the cloud would slope down and get smaller the closer it got to the horizon. Here's a good example of that. That reminds me of another easy observation that should tell you where you live. Take a look at this photo. We've all seen clouds like this, right? Well, now take notice of the dark underside of the clouds. Well, the shaded areas of the clouds, if you lived on a globe, wouldn't it show like this? But we never ever see that. Clearly, the clouds are telling us something. As we can see here, the larger amounts of the shadowed part of the cloud that we can see is closest to us, and as they go away from us, we see less and less of the bottom. Whereas if you were on a globe, you should see more and more of the bottom. Why we don't see what we should if we lived on a board. Now that we understand exactly what the clouds are doing as they go away from us, we can start to understand this idea of the atmospheric dome. That as the cloud goes off in the distance, it is setting in our atmospheric dome. It is not getting closer to the horizon, we know that. But everything we see happens in our personal little dome. Now we can see the sun as the sun goes away from us. Now we understand why the sun sets on a flat earth. And also as the sun's away from the other observer, why it rises on a flat earth. It is simply the sun eclipsing the atmospheric layer or the cloud layer at the horizon off in the distance. And it, much like the cloud, never changed their height in the sky in comparison to you. It's just the way we observe it. So everything that happens above us displays for us in our own personal atmospheric dome. The sun, the moon, and that's why we don't have the exact positions for either one, because they're rendered to each of us separately. Rather, the only time that you could really get the measurement of the distance of the sun would be on the equator, on the equinox. The same goes for Polaris, where you can only get its distance from the North Pole. and both the distance to Polaris and the distance to the sun on the equinox from the equator come out to the same number. That number is the radius of the Earth. So the ISS, hot air balloons, helium weather balloons, planes, lightning, all of it, stars too, are included in your atmospheric dome. Now, if a plane flies over your head in Boston, someone in Florida can't see it. It's too far. Same goes for Polaris, from further than the equator. Here we got another drawing. It's labeled a few places. We'll look at label letter A. That's the observer showing his radius of view circle. Letter B is the supposed curve of the Earth. C is the actual flat plane of the Earth. D is the apparent concavity of the Earth, and that's when we see the water rising to eye level. E is the apparent path of the clouds. F is the true cloud level. G is the apparent path of the sun. And H is the actual sun path. The next image that you see gives you an idea of what many of these atmospheric domes would look like together, all operating at once. When one guy has noon, while another guy has 1 o'clock, another guy has 2 o'clock, and so on and so forth, around the flat plane. We will look at this in an optic simulation in a moment. I also want to bring up another fun flat fact. During a solar eclipse, when the moon crosses the sun, there is an immediate 10-degree Fahrenheit drop in temperature. Well, during sunsets, when the Earth blocks the sun, we don't receive a 10-degree drop in temperature. And why is that? It's exactly the same thing. The sunlight is being blocked by a big body. In this case, it's the Earth, yet we don't see any such drop. Another effect of the atmospheric layer, or blocking or dome, whatever you want to call it, can be seen when we look at things across water in the distance. Think about it, when you're looking across the water, that's the most atmospheric blockage. As you're looking across, you're going to get some distortion. If you try to look across at a lighthouse, it's going to look very broken up to you. It might even look like there's water in front of it. There's a lot of things going on there, but simply by going up higher, you're now above that atmospheric layer where there's less atmosphere, and you can actually look over the water and see the complete lighthouse. All right, now we're going to head over to the website, rick288.github.io/ray-optics/simulator. And this is so we can observe this in probably an easier to understand way. So I've showed the simulator before. Many of you have seen it, but you can use lenses, you can use mirrors, blockers, point sources of light, beams of light, whatever, to create whatever you want, atmospheres of various densities. So here I put a blocker on the ground level just to make the kind of the ground. It is the brown bar there. Also, don't mind the bottom of the screen. You'll see that I've already set up for the multiple dome idea. So let me delete a couple things here. And now I'll add that point source of light, and then I'll add the extended rays so I can get the sun's reflection. And now you can see this orange point here. That is actually the sun that we all see. So you can see as the sun moves across the sky, we can see the sun rise, we can see sunset, we can see noon, and we can even see twilight, dawn, and dusk. So this is what I believe the sun is doing. You can see here, as it sets, you get that late after sunset glow. Just like when it rises, you'll get the same thing over here. You'll get that morning amber. So this is what I think is going on with the sun. And at the bottom, we'll go to there momentarily and we'll see how it works for multiple people. We're talking atmospheric effects here. And here we see a sun setting. And believe me, you will never again look at a sunset the same way, or you shouldn't, because you now should realize that there is no sun setting as you're falling backwards faster than the speed of sound. That's not what sunsets are. Sunsets are the sun going away from you, and we'll see that clearly here in a moment, as the sun does not set because we are spinning out of away from it, and that it's going away at 93 million miles distant from us. No, the sun is just going away from us. There it goes. And you'll see that it's just basically setting on that cloud layer that we talked about earlier. And you can watch it well after the sunset, as we'll do here, and you'll see the sun take off into the distance. It's not setting behind any Earth. That's why we don't see the temperature difference or drop in 10 degrees. It's just off into the distance, going further and further away, and the throw of the light isn't as far as where we are standing our observing position.